After divorcing my CEO husband, I became the heir to a billion-dollar empire. He wasn't ready for what happened next. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Thick glass separated me from the skyline, but I could still hear the low hum of traffic 30 floors below. Julian was already leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, jaw tight the way it got when he was losing patience or losing control. "Let's not drag this out, Elena," he said, nodding toward the stack of papers in front of me. "Sign, and we can both get back to work." I didn't pick up the pen. Not yet. Across the table, his counsel, Richard Halpern, adjusted his glasses and gave me that practiced smile, the one that said we've already won. My own lawyer, Mara Vance, sat perfectly still, her fingers steepled on the folder in front of her. She hadn't said much since we walked in. That was intentional. Mara didn't waste words. "You've had the draft for 2 weeks," Julian said, his tone flat. "What's the holdup?" "Due diligence," I said. He let out a short laugh. "Due diligence. This isn't a merger, Elena. It's a divorce." "Exactly," Mara said quietly. "And in this state, that means equitable distribution." Julian's eyes narrowed. We agreed. The prenup is ironclad. "The prenup covers marital assets," Mara said. "It doesn't cover what you failed to disclose." Richard leaned forward. "With all due respect, Ms. Vance, we've accounted for every account, every property, every—" A knock at the door cut him off. One of the junior associates stepped in, pale, clutching a thick manila envelope. She looked directly at me. "Ms. Whitmore? Courier delivery. Hand to sign only." Julian exhaled through his nose. "We're in the middle of a meeting." "It's fine," I said, standing. I took the envelope, felt the weight of it, and slid my finger under the flap. Inside were crisp legal pages, stapled, stamped, and initialed in half a dozen places. I recognized the letterhead immediately. Whitmore Industries. Julian's expression shifted when he saw the name, just slightly, but I caught it. "What is that?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I flipped to the second page, then the third. By the time I reached the signature line, my pulse had settled into something cold and steady. "Mara," I said, handing her the documents. She scanned them once, then again, slower. Her eyebrows lifted just a fraction, but enough. She set the pages on the table, facing Julian and Richard. "Gentlemen," she said, "this changes the calculus." Julian reached for the papers. Richard beat him to it. As he read, his mouth tightened. "This is unexpected," Richard said carefully. "Unexpected?" Julian's voice was low. "Dangerous. What the hell is this?" "Your wife," Mara said, "is now the majority shareholder of Whitmore Industries." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. Julian stared at me. "That's impossible. Margaret died 6 weeks ago. The will was clear. Everything was going to the foundation. The foundation was the backup." I said, "The primary beneficiary was me." "Since when?" "Since 2 years ago," Mara said. "The amendment was filed privately. Margaret wanted it kept quiet until after probate." Julian's hand curled into a fist on the table. "She never told me. She wasn't required to," I said. Richard cleared his throat. "Even if this is accurate, and we'll be verifying, it doesn't change the fact that Voss Global and Whitmore are separate entities. Your shares don't give you operational control here." "No," Mara said, "but they do give her voting control at Whitmore. And according to Section 4 of the cross-licensing agreement between Voss and Whitmore, any change in majority ownership triggers a review clause, which means Elena can demand a full audit of all joint ventures, including the Shanghai expansion." Julian went very still. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the table. "You remember Shanghai, don't you? The one you told me not to worry about because it's handled." His jaw worked. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then explain it to me," I said. "In the audit." Richard started to speak. But Julian cut him off. This is a fishing expedition. You're trying to use your aunt's company to screw me over in a divorce. No, I said. I'm using my company to protect my interests. There's a difference. Julian pushed back from the table so hard his chair scraped the floor. You think a few shares make you a player? You couldn't run a coffee stand without me. I smiled. It felt good. Funny. Because last quarter, your coffee stand lost 3 million while Whitmore gained 9. Mara gathered the papers, sliding them back into the envelope with deliberate calm. We'll need until Friday to revise the settlement in light of this development. Revise it to what? Julian snapped. 0. You think you're walking out of here with half of us now. I think, I said, standing, that I'm walking out of here with exactly what Margaret intended. And if you want to keep your little overseas arrangements quiet, you'll stop treating this like a negotiation and start treating it like a liability assessment. Julian's eyes locked on mine. For the first time in 13 years. I didn't look away. Get out, he said. Gladly, I said. Mara followed me to the elevator. We didn't speak until the doors closed. He's going to fight this, she said finally. I know. He'll go after the will, the amendment. He'll try to tie it up in court for years. Let him, I said. By the time he's done, I'll already be running the board. The elevator descended in silence. When the doors opened, I stepped into the lobby, past the security desk, past the revolving doors, and onto Park Avenue. The sun hit my face, but I didn't feel it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Welcome to the Empire. Don't let him bury you. I didn't respond. I just kept walking. Behind me, someone else stepped out of the building. I didn't turn around, but I knew who it was. And I knew he was watching the same stock ticker I was. Whitmore was up 4% in after-hours trading. Julian wasn't ready for what happened next. But he would be soon. The Whitmore Industries headquarters sat on 47th Street, a 40-story tower of glass and steel that my grandfather had built in 1972. I had been inside exactly twice before today. Once for a Christmas party when I was 12. Once for Margaret's funeral. Now I owned it. The elevator ride to the 29th floor took 17 seconds. I counted. When the doors opened, I stepped into a reception area that looked more like a museum lobby than a corporate office. Marble floors, abstract art on the walls. A receptionist behind a curved desk who stood the moment she saw me. Ms. Whitmore, she said. They're waiting in the East Conference Room. The board. Mr. Reyes called an emergency session. I hadn't expected that, but I didn't show it. Thank you, I said, and followed the hallway to the right. The East Conference Room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Bryant Park. 12 chairs surrounded a mahogany table. 11 were filled. The 12th, the head of the table, was empty. Caleb Reyes stood near the window, coffee cup in hand. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with graying temples that made him look older than his 38 years. His suit was expensive, but unflashy. Everything about him said, I don't need to impress you. Ms. Whitmore, he said, straightening. Thank you for coming on short notice. I wasn't aware I had a choice. You always have a choice. He gestured to the empty chair. But some choices are better than others. I took the seat. The other board members watched me like I was a variable they hadn't accounted for. An older man at the far end, silver hair, ruddy complexion, suspenders that screamed old money, cleared his throat. I am Harold Vance, he said. No relation to your attorney. Though I suppose that's convenient. It's incidental, I said. Is it? He leaned forward. You've been a shareholder for approximately 14 hours. You've never attended a board meeting. You've never worked in this industry. And now you expect us to hand you operational control? I expect you to follow the bylaws, I said, which state that the majority shareholder appoints the chairperson. That's me. Technically correct. A woman at the opposite end said. She was younger than the rest, maybe mid-40s, with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes. But technically correct and practically wise are different things. And you are Leona Cross, head of the audit committee. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We've reviewed the amendment to Margaret's will. It's legally sound, but that doesn't mean we trust you. I'm not asking for trust. I said, I'm asking for compliance. Caleb set down his coffee cup. Let's slow down. No one is disputing your position, Ms. Whitmore, but there are procedures, transition protocols. Margaret ran this company for 34 years. She had systems in place for a reason. I'm aware of the systems. I said, I'm also aware that those systems allowed a subsidiary in Shanghai to lose $18 million last year without any board oversight. Silence. Harold's face reddened. That's classified information. It's public record. I said, if you know where to look. Leona's smile faded. Who told you about Shanghai? No one told me. I read the quarterly filings. Line item 73. International logistics adjustment. 18 million. No explanation. No follow-up. I turned to Caleb. You signed off on those filings. I did, he said evenly. Did you know what the adjustment covered? He held my gaze. I trusted the numbers I was given. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. I pulled a folder from my bag and set it on the table. Then let me help you find a better one. Leona reached for the folder, but I put my hand on top of it. This stays with me for now, I said, but I'll tell you what's inside. Offshore transfers, shell corporations, payments to a consulting firm in Dubai that doesn't appear to employ anyone, all routed through the Shanghai subsidiary, all signed off by someone in this room. Harold's voice dropped. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a summary of documents I received this morning. If you want to see the originals, I'm happy to provide them to the SEC. You wouldn't, Leona said. I would. I will. Unless someone in this room tells me who authorized those payments. The silence stretched. Caleb broke it. I think we need a recess. I think we need answers. I said, we'll get them. He said, but not like this. You're new to this room, Ms. Whitmore. You don't know the alliances, the histories. You come in swinging a hammer. You're going to break things you didn't intend to break. Like what? Like the entire company. If you go to the SEC, you trigger a federal investigation. That freezes every deal we have in progress, every acquisition, every partnership. Whitmore loses billions in valuation overnight. And then what? You own a shell of what Margaret built. He's right, Harold said reluctantly. Whatever's in that folder. We handle it internally. Quietly. Quietly. I repeated. Is that how Margaret would have handled it? No one answered. I stood. I'm not going to the SEC. Not yet. But I'm not letting this disappear either. I want a full forensic audit of the Shanghai subsidiary. I want access to all board communications from the past 3 years. And I want a list of everyone who knew about these payments. That's going to take weeks. Leona said, you have 5 days. That's impossible. Then hire more people. I picked up the folder and walked toward the door. Ms. Whitmore. Caleb said. I stopped. I'd like to meet with you. Privately. Tonight. Why? Because I think you're smart enough to know you need allies. And I think I'm smart enough to know you're not bluffing. I turned. 7 o'clock. The grill on 52nd. I'll be there. I walked out without looking back. The grill was old New York. Dark wood. White tablecloths. Waiters who had been working there since before I was born. Caleb was already seated when I arrived. A glass of bourbon in front of him. You're early, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. You're punctual. Rare for someone in your position. I don't have a position yet. I have a title. That's more than most people get. He signaled the waiter. What are you drinking? Gin martini. Dirty. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Caleb studied me for a long moment. You handled yourself well today. Better than I expected. Low bar. Maybe. But you didn't panic when Harold tried to bully you. You didn't fold when Leona questioned your competence. Most people in your shoes would have cracked. I'm not most people. No, he said. You're Margaret's niece, which means you inherited more than shares. What does that mean? He leaned back. Margaret and I worked together for 12 years. She didn't trust easily, but she trusted me. Enough to tell me about the amendment before she died. I went still. You knew. I knew she was planning something. I didn't know the details until after the reading. And you didn't warn me. Would you have believed me if I had? I didn't answer. The waiter returned with my martini. I took a sip. Cold. Clean. Good. Why did you want to meet? I asked. Because I think you're right about Shanghai. And I think the person responsible is still sitting on that board. Harold? Too obvious. He's loud. But he's clean. Leona's a possibility. But she's too careful to leave a trail. Then who? Caleb hesitated. I don't have proof yet. But I have suspicions. Share them. Not until I'm sure. If I'm wrong, I burn a bridge I can't rebuild. If I'm right, I need you to promise me something. What? When we find the person, you let me handle the fallout. No SEC, no FBI, internal action only. Why would I agree to that? Because if you go public, you destroy the company. And if you destroy the company, you prove Julian right. I set down my glass. Julian doesn't get to be right about anything. Then prove it. Play the long game. Get control of the board. Clean house. Build your own team. And when you're ready, you decide what happens to the people who betrayed Margaret. I stared at him. You really loved her. I said. She was the closest thing to family I had. He finished his bourbon. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me help you win. The check came. He grabbed it before I could. One more thing. He said. Julian called me this afternoon. About? He offered me a seat on Voss Global's board. Triple my current salary. Full autonomy. And what did you say? I told him I'd think about it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Are you? No. He stood. But I wanted you to know he's already trying to poach your people. He knows you're dangerous. He's just not sure how dangerous yet. I stayed in the booth after he left, finishing my martini in the dark warmth of the restaurant. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. 5 days is too generous. You move slow. Yudi fussed. I typed back, who is this? No reply. I paid the tab and walked out into the October night. The air was cold. The sky was clear. Somewhere above the city lights. The stars were still there. I just couldn't see them yet. The next morning, I arrived at Whitmore at 6:30. The building was mostly empty. Security let me through without question. My office, Margaret's office, was on the top floor. Corner suite. Windows on 2 sides. A desk that looked like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes and framed photographs. I sat in her chair. It still smelled like her perfume. Chanel número 5. I opened the top drawer. Pens, paper clips, a small notebook with handwritten notes, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Elena, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're sitting in my chair. I wanted to tell you everything myself, but some truths are too dangerous to write down. So I left them somewhere safe. Check the safety deposit box at Chase on 5th Avenue, number 721. The key is taped to the bottom of this drawer. Trust no one, not even the ones who seem loyal, especially them. Build your army. Move fast. And when you find the truth, don't blink. I love you. I always did. Mags, I pulled the key from under the drawer. Small, brass, unremarkable. I slipped it into my pocket. Then I called Mara. I need you to meet me at Chase on 5th. Right now. What's going on? I found something Margaret left me. Something good. Something she died for. There was a pause. Then Mara said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and looked out the window. The city was waking up. Lights flickering on. Traffic thickening. Somewhere out there, Julian was planning his next move. Somewhere out there, someone on my own board was feeding him information. But I had something they didn't. I had Margaret's secrets, and I was ready to use them. The Chase branch on 5th Avenue opened at 8. I was at the door at 7:50. Mara arrived at 7:55, carrying a leather briefcase and a cup of coffee that looked like her third of the morning. "You look tired," I said. "I spent last night reviewing the Shanghai documents." "You weren't exaggerating. Someone moved nearly 20 million through 3 shell companies in the last 18 months. Can you trace it back?" "Partially. The paper trail ends at a law firm in Geneva. They're not going to cooperate without a court order. Then we get a court order. We need probable cause for that, and a judge willing to sign off on an international subpoena." She sipped her coffee. "What's in the box?" "I don't know yet." The doors opened. A security guard in a navy blazer checked our IDs, then led us to the basement vault. The safety deposit boxes lined the walls like a library of secrets. Box 721 was near the end of the third row. I inserted the key, turned. The lock clicked open. Inside was a single manila folder, thick, worn at the edges. I pulled it out and opened it on the counter. Photographs, bank statements, copies of wire transfers, handwritten notes in Margaret's looping script, and a USB drive. Mara leaned over my shoulder. "What is it?" I flipped through the pages. The first photograph showed Julian standing next to a man I didn't recognize, shaking hands in front of a building with Chinese characters on the facade. The second showed the same man at a dinner table with Harold Vance. The third photograph made my stomach drop. It was Margaret, sitting in a hospital bed, tubes in her arms, pale, thin, but her eyes were sharp. Next to her stood a nurse, a young woman with dark hair and a nervous smile. On the back of the photograph, in Margaret's handwriting, "Last visitor before the seizure. Never saw her again. Hospital says she quit the next day." I handed the photo to Mara without speaking. She studied it. She thought someone tried to kill her. She knew someone tried to kill her. "Elena, that's a serious allegation. Look at the dates." I pointed to the bank statements. The first transfer to Geneva went through 3 days before this photograph was taken. The second transfer went through the day after she died. Mara's face went pale. "You think Julian?" "I think someone didn't want Margaret to finish her investigation. And I think that someone is still on my board." I slid the USB drive into my pocket. The rest of the documents went back into the folder. "We need to copy everything," I said. "Multiple locations, multiple backups." "I'll handle it." "No, I need you focused on the legal side. I'll find someone else for the technical work." "Who?" I thought about it. "I know a guy, former journalist, does freelance investigations now. He's paranoid enough to be useful. Can you trust him?" "I can pay him." "That's close enough." Mara didn't look convinced, but she nodded. We left the vault and walked back through the lobby. The morning rush was starting. Businessmen in suits, tourists with maps, a woman in a gray coat standing near the entrance, pretending to read her phone. I noticed her because she wasn't reading. She was watching. I kept walking, didn't slow down, didn't look back. But when we reached the street, I pulled Mara into a coffee shop 2 doors down. "We're being followed," I said. "What?" "Gray coat, near the entrance." She was there when we walked in, and she was still there when we walked out. Mara glanced over my shoulder. "I don't see her. She's gone now. But she saw us." "Elena, that could be coincidence." "It could be, but I'm not betting on it." I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in 3 years. It rang 4 times. Then a voicemail picked up. "You've reached Leo Vargas. Leave a message." "I probably won't call back." "Lau, it's Elena Whitmore. I need your help. Call me." I hung up. "Who's Leo Vargas?" Mara asked. "Former investigative reporter for the Times. Got fired for refusing to reveal a source. Now he works freelance. He's good. He's discreet. And he owes me a favor. What kind of favor? I kept his daughter out of jail 2 years ago. DUI. Her third offense. She would have done real time. Mara raised an eyebrow. How did you manage that? I married a man with a lot of lawyers. I didn't like using them for myself, but I didn't mind using them for other people. We walked back to the office in silence. The folder felt heavy in my hands. Heavy with evidence. Heavy with implication. Heavy with the weight of what Margaret had carried alone. Back at Whitmore, I locked the folder in my desk drawer and inserted the USB drive into my laptop. The drive contained a single file, a video recording. I double-clicked. Margaret's face appeared on screen. She was sitting in what looked like her home office. The same bookshelves behind her. The same lamp on the desk. But she looked smaller than I remembered. Frielier. Elena, she said, if you're watching this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you this in person. She paused, adjusted her glasses. I've been investigating Julian for almost 2 years. I started because I noticed irregularities in the Shanghai accounts. I continued because I found evidence that he was using Whitmore's international partnerships to launder money. My breath caught. I don't know who else is involved, but I know it's not just Julian. Someone inside Whitmore is helping him. Someone with access to our financial systems. Someone who knew how to hide the transactions. She looked down at her hands. I confronted him 6 months ago, off the record. I told him I knew what he was doing and that I was going to the board. He denied everything, said I was paranoid, said I was losing my grip. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. 3 weeks later, I had my first seizure. The doctors said it was stress. They said my blood pressure was too high. They said I needed to rest. Her eyes met the camera. I don't believe them. I think someone was poisoning me. Slowly, carefully, in a way that would look natural. She leaned forward. I've left you everything I found. The documents, the photographs, the recordings. Use them carefully. Elena, the people involved in this are dangerous. They killed me. They won't hesitate to kill you. She paused again. Her voice softened. I'm proud of you. I always have been. Even when you married him. Even when you stayed. I knew you'd find your way out. She smiled. Make them pay. The video ended. I sat in the dark office, staring at the blank screen. My hands were shaking. I didn't realize I had been crying until I tasted salt on my lips. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Elena Whitmore. The voice was male. Low. Familiar. Who is this? Someone who knows you just visited a safety deposit box at Chase. I went cold. What do you want? I want to warn you. You're being watched. Not just by Julian's people, by people you don't know about yet. Who are you? I'm someone who worked with Margaret. Someone who owes her a debt I can never repay. Then help me. I am helping you. By telling you to be careful. The USB drive you found? It's not the only copy. Margaret made duplicates. She hid them in places only you would think to look. Where? Think about your childhood. Think about the places that matter to you. She left clues. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. Childhood. Places that mattered. There was only one. The lake house. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Mara. Not Caleb. Not even Leo, who still hadn't called back. I drove north for 3 hours, through suburbs that thinned into farmland, then forest. The lake house was on a private road at the end of a gravel driveway. It had been in the family for generations. My grandfather built it. My father grew up there. I spent every summer of my childhood swimming in the cold water and reading on the dock. It had been locked up since Margaret died. I parked in front of the garage and walked to the front door. The key was still under the same rock where it had been for 30 years. The house smelled musty. Dust covers draped the furniture. The kitchen counters were bare. I walked through the living room, past the fireplace, past the stairs, to the study at the back of the house. Margaret's study. The shelves were filled with books, legal textbooks, biographies, a collection of first edition mysteries. I scanned the titles. looking for something out of place. Nothing. I checked the desk drawers. Empty. I checked under the rug. Nothing. I sat down in a chair and closed my eyes. Think about the places that mattered to you. The dock. I walked outside, down the wooden steps, across the lawn. The dock extended 30 feet into the lake. The water was still. The autumn air was cold. I knelt at the end of the dock and looked underneath. Tucked between two support beams, wrapped in plastic, was a waterproof box. I pulled it out, opened it. Inside was another USB drive, a burner phone, and a letter. I unfolded the letter. Elena, if you're reading this, you found the first drive. Good girl. This phone is encrypted. It has one contact saved. Use it when you're ready to move. The second drive contains everything I couldn't put in the safety deposit box. Names, dates, account numbers, recordings of conversations I had with people who thought they were talking to a dying woman. Use it wisely. And Elena, trust your instincts. You have better ones than you know. I love you. Mags. I slipped the phone into my pocket, the drive into my bag. Then I walked back to the car and drove south. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and pink and purple. Somewhere in the city, Julian was having dinner. Somewhere, the person who helped him kill my aunt was sleeping peacefully. They wouldn't be for long. I was halfway back to Manhattan when my phone rang again. This time, it was Caleb. Where are you? Driving. I need to see you. Something happened. What? Harold Vance is dead. I nearly swerved off the road. What? Heart attack. Found him in his office an hour ago. Paramedics tried to revive him. Couldn't. That's not a coincidence. No. Caleb said. It's not. How did he die? They're doing an autopsy. But unofficially, they found traces of something in his coffee cup. Something that shouldn't have been there. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Someone's cleaning house. I said, someone's sending a message. To you. I know. What are you going to do? I thought about the burner phone in my pocket, the encrypted contact, the second USB drive. I'm going to finish what Margaret started. The line was silent for a long moment. Then Caleb said, I'm with you. Whatever you need. I need you to find out who on the board had access to Harold's office today. Already on it. And Caleb? Yeah. Watch your back. I always do. He hung up. I merged onto the highway and pressed the accelerator. The city lights were getting closer. And so was the war. Harold Vance's funeral was held on a Thursday morning at St. Patrick's Cathedral. I sat in the third row, 2 seats away from Leona Cross, directly behind Julian Voss. Julian wore a black suit that cost more than most people's cars. He sat perfectly still, his hands folded in his lap, his face arranged in an expression of solemn respect. He looked like a man who had lost a colleague, a friend, a mentor. He looked like he was performing. I watched him throughout the service. He never turned around. He never acknowledged my presence. But I knew he felt my eyes on him. I knew because his jaw tightened every time the priest mentioned Harold's dedication to the company. After the service, the crowd spilled onto Fifth Avenue. Mourners in dark coats clustered together, exchanging condolences and business cards in equal measure. I stood near the steps, waiting. Leona Cross approached me first. Elena. She extended her hand. I took it. Her grip was cold and brief. I'm sorry for your loss. Harold was your colleague longer than he was mine. Still, I know this must be difficult for you. Coming into the company under these circumstances. Difficult is one word for it. She studied me. I heard you visited a bank yesterday. News travels fast. In this city, it travels at the speed of money. She stepped closer. I'm going to give you some advice. Free of charge. Stop digging. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Harold is dead. Margaret is dead. The common denominator is that they both got too close to something they shouldn't have. She paused. I liked Margaret. I don't want to see you end up like her. Then help me. I am helping you. By telling you to walk away. Sell your shares. Take the money. Go somewhere warm, live a long life, and let whoever killed them get away with it? There's no proof anyone killed anyone. Harold had a heart condition. Margaret had a stroke. These things happen. These things happen. I repeated, is that what you told yourself when you signed off on the Shanghai transfers? Her face went still. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I have the documents. I have the signatures. I have the dates. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You're playing a dangerous game, Elena. I'm not playing. Neither was Harold. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of mourners. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding. Then someone touched my elbow. I spun around. It was the woman from the bank. Gray coat, dark hair, same face. Don't scream, she said quietly. I'm not here to hurt you. Then why are you here? My name is Danielle Porter. I used to work for your aunt. I was her nurse. You're the woman in the photograph. Yes. You were the last person to see her alive. Yes. And then you disappeared. I didn't disappear. I was threatened, told that if I stayed, I would end up like her. She glanced around. I need to talk to you. Somewhere private. Away from here. Why should I trust you? Because I have information that will put Julian Voss in prison for the rest of his life. I studied her face. She looked terrified, genuinely terrified. Her hands were trembling. Follow me, I said. I led her 2 blocks west to a small cafe. We sat in the back corner, away from the windows. She ordered tea. I ordered nothing. Start talking, I said. Danielle wrapped her hands around the teacup. I was hired to take care of Margaret 6 months before she died. Private nursing. Round-the-clock care. The pay was excellent. The conditions were good. I thought it was a dream job. When did things change? About 3 months in, Margaret started getting worse. Seizures, memory loss, confusion. The doctors said it was her age, her blood pressure. But I'd been a nurse for 15 years. I knew what I was seeing. What were you seeing? Signs of poisoning, heavy metal toxicity. The symptoms match thallium exposure almost perfectly. Thallium? It's a heavy metal, odorless, tasteless, easily administered in food or drink. In small doses, it mimics natural illness. In larger doses, it kills. My stomach turned. Who was giving it to her? I don't know for certain, but I have my suspicions. She leaned forward. Every week, someone from the company would visit. Always different people. Always bringing gifts. Food, wine, supplements. Margaret trusted them. She thought they were checking on her. But you didn't. I started testing the gifts. Discreetly, using basic chemical tests I bought online. Most of them were clean, but not all. Which ones weren't? The supplements. The ones delivered directly from the company pharmacy. Do you still have them? I kept samples. Hidden. I knew if I was right, I would need proof. Where are they now? In a safe place. Somewhere no one will find them unless I want them to. I leaned back. Why are you telling me this now? Because Harold Vance is dead, and I know he was one of the people delivering those supplements. The air left my lungs. Harold? He came every 2 weeks, regular as clockwork. Always brought a new bottle. Always made sure Margaret took the first dose in front of him. I thought about Harold's face at the board meeting, his bluster, his outrage, his insistence that everything was above board. It had all been a performance. Who else? I asked. I don't know, but Harold didn't act alone. Someone higher up was directing him. Julian. I can't prove that, but the timing lines up. Every time Margaret got close to exposing something, her health got worse. Coincidence? No, I said. Not coincidence. Danielle finished her tea. I've been hiding for 3 months, moving from hotel to hotel, paying cash, afraid to use my phone. But I couldn't stay silent anymore. Not after Harold. You did the right thing. I hope so, because if they find out I talked to you, I'm dead. You're not going to die. I'm going to protect you. How? I pulled out my phone and dialed Leo Vargas. This time, he answered. Elena, I need you. Now, where are you? I gave him the address. And Leo, bring your Cheer-Gen kit. We have a witness. There was a pause. Then he said, I'm on my way. Leo arrived 30 minutes later. He looked exactly as I remembered, rumpled jacket, tired eyes, the permanent scowl of a man who had seen too much and trusted too little. Danielle Porter, he said, shaking her hand. I've heard about you. Good things. I hope. I heard you disappeared. That usually means one of two things. You're guilty. Or you're scared. Which one is it? Scared. Good. Guilty people lie. Scared people tell the truth. He sat down. Tell me everything. Danielle repeated her story. Leo listened without interrupting, taking notes on a small pad. When she finished, he leaned back. The supplements. Where are they? Locked in a storage unit in Queens. Unit 417. The key is at my current hotel. Give me the address. I'll pick it up tonight. Be careful. The unit is registered under a fake name, but that doesn't mean it's safe. Nothing is safe, Leo said, but I'm very good at not getting caught. He turned to me. This changes things. With physical evidence, we can go to the police. The DA, the FBI. Not yet. Why not? Because we still don't know who else is involved. If we go public now, the people at the top will bury the evidence before anyone can act. So what's your plan? I need to get inside Julian's operation. Find the paper trail that connects him directly to the poisoning. How are you going to do that? I looked at Danielle. Does Julian know you're alive? As far as I know, he thinks I fled the country. Good. Then he won't be expecting you. What are you thinking? I'm thinking you go back into hiding. Stay there until I call. And when I do, you testify. Testify to what? To everything. The supplements, the visits, the threats, in front of a grand jury. That's a big ask. I know, but it's the only way to make sure he never gets out. Danielle was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll do it. For Margaret. Thank you. Leo stood. I'll get the evidence tonight. Meet me tomorrow morning. Same place. 9 a.m. Be careful. Leo, I'm always careful. He left. Danielle, and I sat in silence for a moment. What do I do now? She asked. Go back to your hotel. Stay inside. Don't answer the door for anyone except me or Leo. And if someone finds me, call me. I'll come. She squeezed my hand. Be careful. Elena, they killed Margaret. They killed Harold. They won't hesitate to kill you. I know. She left. I sat alone in the cafe, staring at the empty teacup. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. I typed back, who is this? The reply came instantly. Someone who doesn't want to see you dead. Then stay out of my way. I can't do that. I'm closer than you think. I waited for another message. None came. I paid the bill and walked out into the cold October air. Somewhere, someone was watching, and I was running out of time. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe at 8:45. Leo was already there, a cardboard box on the seat beside him. Got it, he said, for bottles of supplements, sealed, untampered. Have you tested them? Preliminary test suggests thallium. I'll know for certain after lab analysis. How long? 48 hours. Maybe less if I call in a favor. Do it. He nodded. There's something else. What? I did some digging on Julian's finances. Off the books. Through a contact at a Swiss bank. And I found something interesting. Julian has been making regular payments to a medical research facility in Zurich. Large payments. Quarterly. For what? The facility specializes in toxicology. Specifically, heavy metal poisoning. My blood ran cold. He was paying the people who could identify the poison, or paying them to keep quiet about it. Either way, it's a direct link. Can you prove it? Not yet. The payments are routed through a shell company, but I'm working on tracing them back. Do it faster. I'm trying. Elena. But these people are good. They've been covering their tracks for years. Then we need to force them to make a mistake. How? I thought about it. Julian is arrogant. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. If we push him, he'll overreact. Push him how? By announcing that I'm launching a full independent investigation into Whitmore's finances. Publicly, with a press conference. That's a declaration of war. I know. He'll come after you. I'm counting on it. Leo studied me. You're not afraid of him. I'm terrified of him, but I'm more afraid of letting him get away with murder. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll have the lab results by Friday. Can you hold off until then? I can try. Good, because once you go public, there's no turning back. I know. I looked out the window. The city was gray and cold and indifferent, but somewhere out there, Julian was waking up to his morning coffee, confident that he had won. He had no idea what was coming the morning of the shareholder vote. I woke up at 4:30. I hadn't slept. I had lain in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every scenario, every possible outcome, every trap Julian might have laid. I showered, dressed, black suit, white blouse, low heels. I wanted to look like I belonged in a boardroom, not like I was going to war. But I was going to war. Leo picked me up at 6. He looked worse than I felt. Dark circles under his eyes, coffee stain on his shirt, but his hands were steady, and the folder on his lap was thick. Lab results came back at 3 a.m. He said, confirmed, thallium, concentrated enough to cause severe neurological damage within 6 months, fatal within 12. I took the report, read it, handed it back. Danielle's testimony, plus this. Is it enough? Enough to get a warrant. Enough to indict. Enough to put him away for life. He paused, but only if we survive the next 8 hours. What's the schedule? Shareholder vote starts at 9. Proxy count closes at 10. Results announced at 11. He glanced at me. Julian has been calling board members all week, promising promotions, threatening lawsuits. He's pulling out all the stops. How many votes do we have? Solid commitments from 37%, leaning commitments from another 12. We need 51 to win. That's cutting it close. That's assuming no one flips. And in my experience, someone always flips. I looked out the window. The Whitmore Tower loomed ahead. Dark glass reflecting the gray sky. Then we make sure they don't. The lobby was crowded when we arrived. Reporters, analysts, shareholders, a few faces I recognized from the board, more that I didn't. Caleb met us at the elevator. He looked tense. We have a problem. Just one? Sienna Voss is here. She wants to see you. Privately. Before the vote. Where is she? Conference room B. Second floor. I turned to Leo. Hold the elevator. Be careful. I will. I found conference room B at the end of a narrow hallway. The door was closed. I knocked. Come in. I stepped inside. Sienna Voss stood by the window, her back to me. She was dressed in a charcoal pantsuit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Elena. She turned. Thank you for coming. You said it was important. It is. She took a breath. I'm going to vote against my brother. I didn't react. Why? Because I know what he did. To Margaret. To Harold. To you. She paused. I've known for a long time. I just didn't have the courage to stop him. What changed? You. She met my eyes. You walked into that boardroom alone. No allies. No experience. No one believing in you. And you still didn't back down. I've been hiding behind my brother's shadow for 15 years. I'm done. How many votes do you control? 8%. Between my personal shares and the proxies I've gathered from 3 other family members. 8%. That put me over the edge. Why should I trust you? Because I'm giving you this. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside are bank records, wire transfers, emails, everything linking Julian to the payments in Zurich. I've been collecting them For 2 years. I took the envelope. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Fear. Shame. Pick one. She smiled bitterly, but mostly fear. Julian is not a forgiving person. Neither am I good. Then we understand each other. I tucked the envelope into my jacket. Thank you. Sienna, don't thank me yet. The vote hasn't happened. And Julian still has tricks up his sleeve. What kind of tricks? I don't know. But he's been meeting with someone all week. Someone from outside the company. I don't recognize the name. Can you describe him? Tall. Older. Silver hair. Walks with a cane. I felt a chill run down my spine. Did you catch a name? Morrison. David Morrison. I didn't recognize the name, but the description matched someone I had seen outside the courthouse the day I filed for divorce. Thank you, Sienna. This helps. I hope so, because if Julian finds out I gave you this, I'm as good as dead. He won't find out. I left the room and walked back to the elevator. Leo was waiting. What did she want? 8% of the vote and a smoking gun. He raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Seriously. Then we might actually win this thing. Don't jinx it. The shareholder vote was held in the main auditorium on the ground floor. Rows of seats faced a raised stage with a podium and a large screen displaying the live vote tally. At exactly 9 o'clock, the doors closed. I sat in the front row, flanked by Leo and Caleb. Behind me, the room buzzed with whispered conversations and the rustle of paperwork. Julian sat on the stage, behind a long table, flanked by his lawyers and his remaining allies on the board. He looked calm, confident, like a man who had already won. The chairman of the meeting, a retired judge named Arthur Phelps, stepped to the podium. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special meeting of shareholders of Whitmore Industries. The purpose of this meeting is to elect the new board of directors following the passing of our beloved chairwoman, Margaret Whitmore. He paused. The vote will be conducted by secret ballot. Each shareholder will submit their proxy or vote in person. The results will be tabulated and announced at the conclusion of the voting period. The next hour was a blur of paperwork and procedural formalities. Shareholders approached the voting stations in groups. Proxies were verified. Ballots were cast. At 10 o'clock, the voting period ended. Arthur Phelps returned to the podium. The votes have been counted. I will now announce the results. The room fell silent for the position of chairwoman of the board. The candidates are Elena Whitmore and Julian Voss. He opened the envelope. The total votes cast, 100% of outstanding shares. The votes for Julian Voss, 49.4%. My heart stopped. The votes for Elena Whitmore, 50.6%. The room erupted. Iset frozen, barely able to breathe. Beside me, Leo let out a long exhale. You did it. I didn't feel like I had done anything. I felt like I had survived. Julian rose from his seat. His face was pale. His hands were clenched at his sides. He stared at me with an expression I had never seen on him before. Fear. This isn't over, he said, his voice carrying across the room. Yes, it is, I said. No, it's not. He turned to Arthur Phelps. I demand a recount. The votes have been certified by an independent auditor. Phelps said calmly, the result is final. Then I demand an investigation into voter fraud. On what grounds? On the grounds that my sister colluded with the opposition. The room went quiet. Sienna stood up from her seat in the back row. I didn't collude with anyone. I voted my conscience. Your conscience. Julian spat. You don't have a conscience. You have a bank account. And someone filled it. That's a lie. Is it? Julian pulled out his phone. I have records. Transfers from a shell company to your personal account. $50,000. Deposited 3 days ago. Sienna's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Because you didn't make the deposit. Someone else did. Someone who wanted to frame you. I stood up. Julian, this is desperate. Even for you. Is it? Then explain the deposit. I looked at Sienna. She looked genuinely confused, terrified. I didn't know if she was innocent or guilty. But I knew one thing: Julian was buying time. "Arthur," I said, "I request a recess. 30 minutes." Granted. The room dissolved into chaos. I found Sienna in the hallway, pacing. "I swear, Elena, I don't know anything about that deposit." "I believe you." "You do?" "Julian is desperate. He's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. That deposit was planted. By who? By him. Or by someone working for him. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we stay ahead of it." "How?" I thought for a moment. "Do you have access to Julian's personal accounts?" "I have access to the family trust." "Why?" "Because if he planted that deposit, he had to move money out of somewhere to do it. If we can prove the money came from one of his accounts, we can discredit his accusation. That's going to take time." "We don't have time." Leo appeared behind me. "Actually, we might." He held up his phone. "I just got a call from my contact at the Swiss bank. Julian made a withdrawal of exactly $50,000 from a private account 4 days ago, the same day the deposit was made into Sienna's account." "Can you prove it?" "I have the transaction records. They're being emailed to me as we speak." "Send them to my phone." "Already done." I looked at Sienna. "Go back inside. Sit down. Look confident. I'll handle the rest." She nodded and walked back into the auditorium. I turned to Leo. "How much time do we have?" 10 minutes before the recess ends." "Enough time." When the meeting reconvened, the tension in the room was palpable. "Arthur," Phelps called for order. "Before we proceed, Mr. Voss has raised a concern regarding the integrity of the vote. I will allow him to present his evidence." Julian stepped forward. "As I stated earlier, my sister received a payment of $50,000 from an unknown source 3 days ago. I believe this payment was intended to influence her vote." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I stood. "May I respond?" Arthur nodded. I walked to the podium. "Mr. Voss claims that a mysterious deposit proves voter fraud, but he neglected to mention one detail." I turned to the screen behind me. "The deposit into Ms. Voss's account originated from a shell company. That shell company is controlled by Julian Voss." I displayed the transaction records Leo had sent me. 4 days ago, Julian withdrew exactly $50,000 from his private account in Switzerland. The same amount, the same day. The money was routed through 3 intermediaries before landing in Sienna's account. Julian's face went red. "That's fabricated. It's documented, certified by the bank, signed by your own financial advisor. You're lying." "I'm not the one who's lying." "Julian, you are. You planted that deposit to discredit your sister because you knew she was going to vote against you. You panicked, and now everyone in this room knows it." The room exploded in noise. Arthur Phelps banged his gavel. "Order! Order!" Julian stepped toward me. His face was twisted with rage. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You haven't. You don't know what I'm capable of." "I know exactly what you're capable of. I have the lab reports. I have Danielle Porter's testimony. I have the evidence that you poisoned Margaret Whitmore." The room went silent. Julian froze. "You're insane," he said. "Am I?" I pulled the lab report from my jacket. "This is a toxicology report from an independent lab. It confirms that the supplements you had Harold Vance delivered to Margaret contained lethal doses of thallium." "That's not true." "Then explain why you've been making quarterly payments to a toxicology research facility in Zurich for the past 2 years." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. I turned to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the drama, but I felt you deserved to know the truth about the person who wanted to run this company." I looked at Julian. "You're not just defeated. You're exposed, and you're going to prison." 2 men in dark suits entered from the side door. Federal agents. Julian saw them and went pale. "Elena," he said, his voice cracking. "Please." "Please what?" "Please spare you?" Like you spared Margaret? The agents reached him. Julian Voss, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and money laundering. They handcuffed him and led him out of the room. The last thing I saw was his face as the door closed behind him. Defeated, broken, gone. The aftermath was a blur. Press conferences, interviews, legal proceedings. The board unanimously approved my appointment as chairwoman. Caleb was promoted to CEO. Leona Cross resigned before she could be investigated. Sienna Voss took her seat on the board. Danielle Porter testified before a grand jury. Julian was indicted on 12 counts. His bail was denied. 6 months later, I stood on the roof of the Whitmore Tower, looking out at the city. The sun was setting. The sky was gold and pink and purple. Footsteps behind me. I didn't turn. Beautiful view. Caleb said, "It is. Hard to believe it's ours now. It was always ours. We just had to fight for it." He stood beside me, his hands in his pockets. "What now?" he asked. "Now we rebuild. Fix what Julian broke. Make Whitmore stronger than it ever was. And after that," I turned to look at him. "After that, we see what happens." He smiled. "I can live with that." We stood in silence, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I thought about Margaret, about the letter she left me, about the empire she built and the battle she started. I thought about Julian, about the look on his face when they led him away. I thought about the future, about everything I had fought for, everything I had lost, everything I had gained. I didn't just survive the divorce. Julian, I rebuilt the empire you thought you could bury, and I did it my way.